Every day, millions of people go online to search for local businesses. Does your small business show up? When you create a website on WordPress.com, you make it easier for your customers to find you, to connect with you, to hear how you can help them. Your business needs an online home. It needs a WordPress.com website. You don't need experience setting up websites. WordPress guides you through the process from start to finish. They take care of the technical stuff, so it's easy to get your site up and running. Their customer support team is made up of WordPress experts eager to help you get the most from your site. They're available to help 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and weekends. Plans start at just $4 a month, and all WordPress plans include a custom domain name for the life of the plan. Come see why 28% of all websites run on WordPress. Get started today with 15% off any new plan purchase. Go to WordPress.com/Golic to create your website and find the plan that's right for you. That's WordPress.com/Golic for 15% off your brand new website. WordPress.com/Golic.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Good Wednesday morning, everybody. Woohoo! And welcome in to another edition of Golic and Wingo. Glad you are here with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. We, as always, are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us via the Shell Pensacola Performance Line. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr. We all right? Everybody
yeah,
good?
all good, man. Midweek, we're all bracing for the big storm here in the Northeast coming up tomorrow.
Seems to be a vacillating forecast on how much
does.
snow we're getting.
And you know what I can't stand here, and I'm sure others as well. I can't stand the weather people's giddiness.
Oh, yeah.
At just how bad the weather's going to be and how giddy they are.
Pants all around their ankles right now. They're really awful. Just loving life. It's sick and twisted because we're going to be sitting there because the immediate place that we all go to when we see this is shoveling, right?
Yeah.
Like you just think, all right, how much am I going to have to shovel? Those weather people aren't thinking about that. They're not thinking about the everyman. No. They're concerned with themselves, and it's despicable.
But this is like the playoffs for them.
It is.
You get a big storm, that's what it is.
Got to go in early today.
We get geeked up for the NFL postseason and the college football playoff. It's sort of the same thing. By the way, just to show you how cold it's been in the Northeast and in other places, by the way, across the country.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I was driving into work today, and I realized it was 6 degrees warmer this morning than it was yesterday, and it was 1.
Isn't that amazing?
It was 1 this morning.
At least
and it was 6 degrees warmer than it was
Here's
yesterday.
the thing, though. The weather people get geeked up about bad weather.
Yes.
We get geeked up about good stuff.
Oh, I don't know. We like cold weather playoff games in the NFL. We do like that.
You guys like that. But I've been over here in team good weather on everything.
Yeah.
I'm 72 and sunny till I die.
But I mean, it's playoffs we're talking about. It's good basketball we're talking about. It's
totally
streaks in the NHL.
Throwing your highlighter.
About. Throwing my highlighter. We're talking about good things in sports, not how much snow we all have to shovel in a day and a half.
Yeah, it's
I
going to be
hate those people. I hate you all.
Well,
not in a bad way.
Live, local, and late breaking. We'll get the Doppler 5 extra super sonar, super
go.
3D radar weather for you and get that updated for you. So that's what really up and down. They're talking about this maybe as far down as Florida.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an ugly one.
I just need it to clear out of Atlanta because I'm hoping for like the incremental bump up to your point. 6 degrees warmer this morning.
Right.
If it can be in the 30s in Atlanta this weekend when we're down there, I'm down there. It's oh yeah,
we win.
You pop the top.
Yeah. We're walking off the plane in shorts and a t-shirt,
flip flops.
Are you kidding me? Sun rays hit me. Yeah.
Unlike Keenan Allen last Sunday, who was playing in L.A. in a hoodie.
Yeah,
that was quite interesting. Yeah. We have a lot to get to today. We got Isaiah Thomas's debut for the Cleveland Cavs.
Yes, we'll
get to that. Nick Saban made some more interesting comments about some things that he's not happy with the college football playoff. The numbers came out for the semifinals.
Yes, they did.
We'll get to that. We have some more surprising NFL coaching news. Marvin Lewis is sticking around. We'll get into all of that. And on the guest today, we have Jon Gruden will join us talking about the wild card game, as well as maybe some team called the Wokeland Waiters.
Maybe to see what's going on in that situation.
We may talk about that. Kyle Williams will join us of the Buffalo Bills.
Hell yeah.
In the playoffs for the first time, the big man touchdown that helped salt away that victory. Kirk Herbstreit will join us as well to talk about the College Football National Championship. And Brian Windhorst will be with us as well, our ESPN NBA insider, as we get set to talk about what it means for the Cavaliers now that Isaiah is back and how they will manage his minutes going forward after dealing with the hip issue that has kept him out of, or did keep him out of the first 36 games. So what we're saying is it's a happy, happy hump day. Lots to get to. Let's get started with...
It's time for Off the Top.
Whether you like it or not, it's just beginning.
With Golic and Wingo.
All right, we start off the top in college basketball. 10th-ranked Kansas lost its third home game of the season last night, falling 85-73 to 18th-ranked Texas Tech. Jayhawks had just lost 3 of 83 home games total over the previous 5 seasons.
That's a tough call. Yeah. Now, one of the losses came at the Sprint Center in Kansas City. It's considered a home game. It's kind of like when UConn plays on campus or at the Hartford.
Or when the Packers used to play in Milwaukee as opposed to Lambeau.
Exactly. So they lost 2 at their actual home, but 3 home games overall. As you mentioned, 80-3 at home in the last previous 5 seasons, and all 3 coming this year. That's a tough call when you dominate that much at home, the expectation at home, and this was an 85-73 game against a ranked opponent in Texas Tech, but still, when you have that much dominance at home and to drop all 3 already.
Well, when the standard is winning the Big 12 every year, and that it is eerily reminiscent of, I remember when we played Oklahoma in football back when Bob Stoops' home record there, I think they had lost 4 or 5 games when we went down there and beat them in 12 up until that point. So you understand as a team coming in how much that means. That's one of those we rarely appreciate in the moment as athletes, historical significance. That was one I remember in the time going, this is special. So for Texas Tech on the other side to come in there and steal a win regardless of where this program is huge.
Texas Tech, by the way, 2-0 in the conference right now. All right.
Hey now.
How about this? Coming into this year, Bill Self was 220-10 in Allen Fieldhouse in his 14 seasons in Lawrence. He's now 226-12. And again, that third home loss, as you said, was in the Sprint Center in Kansas City. We continue.
Off the top.
People are leaving the desert. First Bruce Arians and now Carson Palmer. The quarterback announced his retirement after 14 seasons. He played for the Cardinals, Bengals, and Raiders over the course of his year, said you just know about when it was time to walk away from the game.
One of 4 quarterbacks in NFL history to throw at least 100 touchdown passes for 2 different NFL teams, Cardinals and Bengals. The others, Peyton Manning, Colts and Broncos, Fran Tarkington, Giants and Vikings, and Kurt Warner, Rams and Cardinals. So, you know, he going over had the injury bug, obviously, the last couple of years. An interesting way where when he left Cincinnati, didn't want to play there anymore. Was talking about, well, I don't have to play. I got $50 million in the bank. By the way, the biggest number for him is I think he made $173 million or something like that in his career.
Decent. Good for him.
Good number for you. Good job. And ending out in the desert is great as well, where I'm going to end up making a lot less money than he's made out in the desert. But
you're like making $50 million a year, so it doesn't matter.
Who?
You. That's what I was told.
Let me hold some.
Yeah.
It's all coming to you.
All I got to say is if Sydney's up and listening right now, she'll be really, really happy.
Yeah, please do not sell her that lie, because that makes you officially worth more to her dead than alive.
Really does. Most passing touchdowns by our quarterback never to start a Super Bowl. Warren Moon third at that 291, Carson Palmer second at 294, and Phillip Rivers first at 342 for that. But obviously a good career for Carson Palmer. Is that the
ultimate list as a quarterback you don't want to be on? I mean, if you think about it, I mean, that's saying really good things about your career, but I would imagine every quarterback's like, Don't be on that list.
Yeah,
that's like leading the minor leagues in home runs. That's like being Crash Davis.
It's like being Marvin Lewis.
We'll get to that actually. Nicely done.
Oh wow!
He
went there.
We'll sort of bring that up a little bit. Yeah. We'll talk about it more. But Marvin Lewis, a lot of people thought that he was going to be done. I mean, it had been reported that he was going to walk away and look for something else, and lo and behold, he gets a 2-year contract extension.
That's going to be. We'll get into that one.
We will get into that one as well. But good thing for Carson is that. Well, I think Junior on your show. What was it that he had the best winning percentage of any Heisman Trophy winning quarterback?
Yeah, Hembo, I need you to look that up because I think technically Cam Newton might have more wins already or maybe close in that category as a former Heisman winner.
He has the most wins, not the best record.
The most wins of a former Heisman
wins.
Which is impressive and shows you kind of the burden of that award, how much it really is about the college career and not projecting forward. But for him, marry that up with a lot of pro success.
And by the way, the disembodied voice of Hembo, good to have you on the show.
Good to have you, Hembo.
Welcome back. back, brother.
Always good to have Hembo on the show.
No baseball talk.
No. Give me the White Sox lineup 1 through 9 and their war against all replacements. Thank you.
Off the top.
Meanwhile,
the war against replacements.
It is a war against replacements. We're against that stat. We are against that stat.
Oh, boy.
Meanwhile, with Tuesday's win against the Knicks, Spurs head coach Greg Popovich moved into sole possession of 5th on the all-time NBA coaching wins list, breaking a tie with George Karl.
Yeah, George Karl. Next up is Pat Riley. So Popovich sitting there at 5th. Pat Riley, he's 34 away from Riley. 44 games left in the regular season for them. So if he goes 34-10, 35-10, he moves into 4th. Obviously, he's going to keep coaching. He's 34 away from Riley at 4th. He's 45 away from Jerry Sloan at 3rd. So that's in the very near future. And then it gets a little more distant. Second is Lenny Wilkins. He's 156 away from Wilkins, and Don Nelson leads the way. He's 159 away from Don Nelson. So he'll be getting up to 3rd by next year at some point. But this guy has been ridiculous in what he has done since coming out of the management group there and onto the floor and coaching.
It really is amazing, obviously, the longevity and the amount of success. They made the playoffs in all 20 years, 50 wins in all but one season, and that's because that season was shortened to only 50 games.
And they won 37 of those 50 games.
And didn't they win the championship that year?
Yes, they did. So it's still managing to do it on the top end, and really was biding all his time to get to this current time socially, because he has been in the forefront of NBA coaches popping off in press conferences about the current state of affairs in the United States.
Yes, he is.
It seems like he was tailor-made. He was one of those guys that was born too early and thankfully made it and got to sustain the success into the time he deserves now.
He's getting it all in now, isn't he? Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah. The interesting thing there is Popovich is an unbelievable coach. There's no doubt about that. And with the things he's done in a small market city, San Antonio is not one of the bigger cities in the NBA, where he has a very different thought mentality as opposed to a lot of coaches. Are we in the golden era of coaches right now? When you have Bill Belichick, who I think most people would agree is maybe the best coach ever in any sport of all time.
He's getting him and Nick Saban.
That's my point. Yeah. You have Nick Saban, you have Greg Popovich, and you have Bill Belichick right now. And I know we're all about the players, and we should be, but when you look at these guys and what they've accomplished in their careers, I mean, obviously you have John Wooden with what he did at UCLA, and we understand what Red Auerbach did in a different time. It was a different time where there weren't as many teams that could be invited into a championship event, whether it's the NCAA or the NBA playoffs, and compete. So those numbers will always stand alone. They will always stand alone. But are we looking at maybe across sports with the depth and competitive balance that we have in all of these sports? Are we looking maybe the golden age of head coaches in these sports right now?
Well, I think especially when you take into account free agency, you're just dealing with a lot of different circumstances in all this. And you remember the guys coming up too now. I mean, when it's all said and done, resume-wise, what are we going to talk about Steve Kerr as? A guy who has a chance to amass as much success as anyone else and deserves credit for setting a tone there and creating an environment for all the success we've seen in Golden State.
And certainly what comes along with that is, well, look at the players you have. Well, you know, I always remember hearing that about Phil Jackson. Well, he had Michael Jordan. Well, any coach who won a number of championships had great players. Yeah. Okay? What I think is coming to an end is the longevity that we're seeing out of these coaches. Is guys both in college and pro staying. I mean, as we come off of Snyder going for a 27th year.
78 years old. Bill Snyder going to be the head coach of Kansas State.
Absolutely a fantastic story there. But they're way more the exception than the rule for college and pro in all sports that want to change coaches over and over and over again. There's just no patience unless you're in Cincinnati.
Yeah, when Marvin Lewis. But it is interesting. Like you mentioned Phil Jackson, and obviously his rings are ridiculous, and people say, well, he had Michael Jordan. Well, Doug Collins had Michael Jordan. You know, he didn't win anything. Yeah. And now, to be fair, Michael Jordan didn't win anything until Scottie Pippen showed up.
That's exactly
so you can't just say you got one great player.
You can always connect those things. But to your point,
I mean, it is interesting to see these three guys in different sports completely dominating in an era where you're not supposed to be able to dominate.
To your point, I think what's ending over, and I don't know when it has kind of ended, is the longevity. You just don't see coaches get that much leash anymore.
No. It's continuity, and it's what happens when you flood any system with the amount of money that's at stake in all of this for a lot of the people making the decisions.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting. Pop is just a guy that has just been a consistent winner in an era where he didn't have, I mean, he had Tim Duncan, I get that, but he didn't have a LeBron. He didn't have a Michael Jordan. He had some really, really good players that he's built around, and and look, if Kawhi Leonard doesn't get hurt last year in the first game of the Western Conference Finals, you don't. I mean, they were
smoking them.
They were shellacking the Warriors in Game 1.
The one thing I like about Popovich as well, that's a sport in the NBA where, let's be honest, the players run the show.
Correct.
The players want you out, you're out, except for a few, and Popovich is one of them.
That's exactly right. And to that point, again, with the lack of stability and the lack of longevity and the players having so much power in that sport, it speaks volumes to what he's been able to do. So congratulations to Pop, and we'll see what happens going forward.
Off the top.
Staying in the NBA, hey, the Cavs finally have the team they wanted to have at the beginning of the year. Isaiah Thomas, after missing the first 36th game of the year, made his Cleveland debut, scored 17 points in 19 minutes in the Cavs' win over Portland.
Yeah, they were good with Thomas on the floor when LeBron was off the floor, and vice versa. They outscored the Blazers 31-13 with Isaiah Thomas on and LeBron off. Remember, Isaiah came off the bench in this one. Eventually, he's going to be the starting point guard. He put up better numbers at the point guard position than what has gone on all year for the Cavaliers at the point guard position. But my thought has always been, take your time. He's sitting out tonight, and a lot of people are looking into that because it's against the Celtics, a game against the Celtics, but he's sitting out. I get it. Any athlete who's gone through any injury, especially as major as he's had coming back, it wasn't the game. They limited his minutes, and he did well with the 17 points in 19 minutes. But as you know, Mike, it's today. How does he feel today? Waking up after all that time off, playing an actual game, how does he come back after that injury and trying to get himself into basketball shape?
Yeah, the people are going to look at it because it's the Celtics and feel some type of way about it, but this is a timeline that they have been working. The training staff, they gave the game ball to the head trainer there last night for all the work that he's done helping Isaiah get back to this point. So they've had this plan in place. They understand what they want to do with this. And so the Celtics are a nameless gray face that happen to be on the second night of the back-to-back.
Yeah. By the way, again, not only is he not playing, they're not going to do the tribute video that so many NBA teams do when a player returns.
Right.
And that was, I think they talked to Isaiah about that.
They did, because he's not going to play, and he said it was more, he was getting crushed a little bit for that, but he said it's about my family as well, for them to enjoy. We all know the horrific situation in the playoffs last year with his sister passing away. So they're going to wait till he actually going to play in a game, and I completely understand why he's not playing in this game.
Yeah, and again, Isaiah Thomas, Brian Windhorst will join us later on in the show to talk about it. So Isaiah Thomas gave the Cavs the confidence to win last night because he had 17 points. I think the average for the point guard for the Cavs had been like 8.9.
It'd been not good, and he was good.
Yes, it was a lot to a little.
There you
analysis.
Go.
And now it's much better because he's on the a lot, and the little had been the previous point guard play. So he gave him the confidence to win last night, just like the folks over at Quicken Loans. Brought to you by National Mortgage Lender Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. And again, we'll get into a little bit later on Golic and Wingo the situation with Isaiah Thomas and how they're going to sort of work him in and what the long-term team will look like. Because remember, at the start of the season, it was a little rough start for the Cavs after the win over the Celtics. Then they completely righted the ship, and now they're going to go through this process again with Isaiah and see how quickly they can get that thing going in the right direction, as they did last night against Portland. But we brought up Marvin Lewis because it had been widely speculated, again, by people here, including our own Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen, that once the season was over, I think 2 or 3 weeks with 2 or 3 weeks to go in the regular season, that Marvin Lewis was probably going to walk away from the Cincinnati Bengals after a 15-year run, and lo and behold, instead, Coach Marvin Lewis got a 2-year contract extension on Tuesday, trying once again now to get that one playoff win that he has not had in 15 seasons. Now, they have been to the playoffs 7 times, but 0-7 in the playoffs. However, people need to understand, when Marvin Lewis got to Cincinnati, people forget, because we're in a short-term memory society now, the Bengals were the Browns.
They were the Browns.
They were the current Browns.
Yep.
That's how bad they were. They were called the Bungles. They couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't draft well. Nothing was working right. And he made them a respectable franchise that has been to the playoffs in 7 of 15 seasons, almost 50% of the time. But the one thing looming over him was that donut in the win column in the postseason. And our Stephen A. Smith, who, by the way, can now be heard nationally 1 to 3 on ESPN Radio, went on SportsCenter last night, and let's say he was having none of it.
As far as I'm concerned, Mike Brown and Cincinnati Bengals ownership has essentially given the city of Cincinnati the proverbial finger, told them to go kick rocks. We don't care what you think or how we feel because we're getting paid. Why? This is the third team, lowest attendance in the league. Only the Chargers in L.A. at the StubHub Center and the winless Cleveland Browns have worse attendance than the Cincinnati Bengals. So the fan base is abandoning you. Your winning has abandoned. Your level of productivity has abandoned. And you still keep a job? It's disgraceful. There is no excuse for it. As far as I'm concerned, it's an abomination of the highest order when it comes to coaching, because what you're saying is you don't care about winning.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
I want to be clear about that, but there are some points.
Yes, there are.
that are valid in what Stephen A was saying. And by the way, on the record thing, Marvin Lewis, often talked about, hey, you haven't won the playoff game, 0-7. Bengals only been favored in 2 of those games, 2013 against the Chargers, 2009 against the Jets. Kind of crazy things that happened. Of course, obviously, they had that wild weekend game against the Steelers that sort of devolved into a street fight.
Right, yeah, exactly.
With a couple years ago. So we'll get into all of that.
Yeah.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. We're delighted to be joined on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line by Jon Gruden. Of course, a former head coach for the Raiders and Bucks, won a Super Bowl with the Bucks, and he's calling the Titans-Chiefs playoff game for us Saturday at 4:20 Eastern on Wild Card Weekend. John, thanks for being with us. We'll get to all of that, but obviously your name has been in the news quite a bit the last few days. Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen reporting that they believe you're going to be the next head coach of the Oakland Raiders. You've said, yes, you believe you are being considered. So what can you tell us now about that? Are you going to be the next head coach of the Raiders?
Well, that's up to Mark Davis. I have had conversations with Mark, and they're still, I believe, going through the interview process. And when he knows, I think we'll all know. But I appreciate Adam and Chris's confidence that I have a chance of getting that job. It's awful nice of them.
So I guess the question would be, if Mark Davis calls you and said, we've gone through all our candidates, and, John, you're the one we choose, we'd like you to be the next coach of the Oakland Raiders, will you be the next coach of the Oakland Raiders?
I think there's a good chance. I'm excited about where I am in terms of studying the game and prepared to come back and coach. I just don't want to sit here and speculate, and it's almost like I don't know what's going to happen, Mike. I got to be honest with you. It's been a long couple weeks. I know they've gone through their process of interviewing candidates, and until they're done, I won't know, but I did have a good meeting with Mark. I've known him a long time and got a lot of respect for the Raider football organization.
Then more on a general thing, because we just had Bruce Arians on yesterday, who just called it quits and said, boy, at some point he turned around and his wife said it's his son's birthday, and he's like, his son Jacob turned 40. It was like, wow. I know you went through coaching. Your sons have grown up some, and now the possibility of going back. But we've seen like Bill Cowher go into the media and not come back, and I understand some reasons there. Jimmy Johnson as well. And it's always been talked about with you whether it would happen out. We've seen it in baseball with some managers leaving and then coming back. What's the draw with you coaches? What is it, even though you've been out for a while now? So this is a more general question that says, you know what, I want to get back to doing this again.
Well, you miss the players. You miss the grind. You miss the journey. Obviously, you miss winning, the opportunity to win. But I just miss being on a team. A lot of times I wake up, I miss being on a team. I do love my Monday night team. That's what's been outstanding. I've had a great opportunity to work with some exceptional people. But the peaks and valleys that go along with the football season are things I think all coaches always miss when they get away from it. But, again, not to speculate very much. I'm being completely honest. I don't know what's going to happen. I've been through contract negotiations with the Raiders before. I can tell you I was traded in 2001. So I'm not going to do anything except go about my business as a Monday Night Football guy for ESPN. I'm excited for this game on Saturday.
And John, we understand that, and listen, that's one of the reasons Herm Edwards left us to go back to be the head coach of Arizona State, because he said he wanted to feel the grass under his feet one more time. And we'll get into that Titans game, I promise, but I have one last question about the Raiders situation. It's been reported that they offered you ownership in the team and some of the things that they've talked about. What can you tell us about that?
There's no truth to that at all. I heard Stephen Smith screaming at me on TV yesterday on one of his shows.
Well, he does that to everybody, so just so you know.
That's one of the most there's no validity to that at all. None, zero. So that's a nice segment that I saw, but no ownership, that's for sure.
All right, well,
Trey.
All right, well, John, we appreciate you answering.
Yeah, we
that.
do. So nothing there, and if Mark calls and offers you the job, then you go back to doing what you love to do in coaching. So that's fantastic. Until that time, you got a game to call on Saturday, Titans and the Chiefs. So as we look at that game, we saw the Chiefs start Pat Mahomes, but we know obviously they go back to the starters now, and the Titans coming into the end of the season the way they have as well to get into the playoffs. You talk a lot about how you're finishing a season and how you are by the end and playing. Where do you put these two teams as how they're going into the playoffs and what kind of shape?
I think Kansas City's playing good football down the stretch. Their win against the Chargers at home a couple weeks ago was very impressive. Offensively, they looked to have found their groove again. The big three is going to be hard to stop. The running back, Hunt, is spectacular, and he looks like he's revived. His legs are back. He's running hard. Tyreek Hill, good luck stopping him. He is everywhere, and he can change the scoreboard instantly, just like he did last year against the Titans in the regular season. And Kelsey is a terrible mismatch problem for everyone. So the big three are in high gear, I think, for the Chiefs. Andy Reid, trust Alex Smith, who's had a week off. His arm will be alive. It'll be interesting. I really think they're going to be a hard out at home. But their defense, the Chiefs' defense, has struggled. They have obviously been missing Dee Ford and Tom Bahali's presence all year as pass rushers. Losing the great safety man early in the season is a terrible loss for them. And I just am anxious to see if Marcus Mariota and this Tennessee Titan offense can live up to, I think, their potential. They've added some really good receivers. The rookie Davis, brought in Eric Decker. Rashard Matthews can play. Delaney Walker's a Pro Bowler. They got the smash mouth offense. It's time for them to fly. And I think noise and weather is going to be a big part of this game too, Mike.
Oh, no question. Best smelling stadium anywhere is
without
Arrowhead,
question.
With that barbecue comes wafting in from the parking lot. But John, you mentioned it. It's time for this offense to fly, and you mentioned Mariota. It has been a real regression year for him. Obviously, he's coming back from the leg injury. He's had some hamstring issues this year. What do you think's been missing from his performance in 2017?
I think two things. Number one, they have a lot of new characters. We talked about Davis, who's a rookie who missed a lot of time. They missed a lot of practice time together. And Decker came over late in the process from the Jets. So there are some new pieces that have been moving. And the injury is huge for Marcus. I know he's played through it, but this man uses his legs to create so much offense. And watching him run around late in the fourth quarter against Jacksonville last week makes me feel like, you know what, he's back. And I think losing time on the practice field with his injury, with Davis's injury, I think it hurt him. I think obviously the leg injury is a little bit more serious and perhaps lingered longer than people think. But I got a lot of confidence in Mariota in big games. Can he handle the ball in the cold weather? Some of these people from Hawaii don't like going to Arrowhead in January.
As far as Kansas City, we've heard all the talk, and we saw that Andy Reid, who is so respected as a coach, moving up big time to get a Pat Mahomes, who started the last game, and the thoughts of him going forward. Do you see this as, or what discussions I would imagine do you have to have as Andy Reid and with Alex Smith that maybe whenever a lot of people are speculating whenever the season ends, whether it's this weekend, next weekend, or whatever, that it's going to be the end of Alex Smith and the beginning of Pat Mahomes. If that's been decided by Andy Reid already, do you think Alex Smith knows that as well?
I think Alex Smith, after meeting with him and getting to know him over the years, Mike, I think he has a real good idea of the reality of his long-term future in Kansas City. It might last another year. He's had a spectacular year, and they might keep him another year to help bring this young quarterback along. But Alex Smith has been through this before. This isn't his first rodeo. He's been through multiple changes in San Francisco, and I think he realizes that Mahomes is the future of the Chiefs, but the future doesn't start today. It's all about the single elimination tournament, and this guy is such a professional. He is such a team guy. I don't think Alex Smith is giving it one grain of thought.
Jon Gruden with us on Golic and Wingo. Of course, he'll be calling the wild card game between the Chiefs and the Titans. And again, as we talked earlier on the show, if the Raiders do indeed come calling with an offer, it looks like he will be taking that job and heading to Oakland and then eventually on to Las Vegas. John, let's talk a little bit about the Philadelphia Eagles because they are the number one seed in the NFC. But it sure doesn't feel like they're a number one seed because of the injury to Carson Wentz. The offense has really struggled over the last 2 weeks. Nick Foles came in against the Giants and actually looked great. 4 touchdown passes, completed or converted 46%. The offense did of their third down conversions. But in the last 2 weeks, whether it was him or Nate Sudfeld, that offense has just been non-existent. How concerned are you about what has been a great season for Philadelphia may come up flat because of what obviously happened at the most important position in team sports in this country?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of concern. The weather, too, the last 2 weeks has been very, very difficult to throw the ball in Philadelphia against the Raiders and the Cowboys, and it may be that way in the playoffs. But remember when Foles took over, Trey, he took over late in the season when Wentz got hurt against the Rams. And if you go watch a professional football team practice these days, the backup quarterbacks, they get no reps. So I think a lot of this is going to be how much reps, how many things can they do to enhance Nick Foles on game day. They're getting to know each other now, his strengths, his weaknesses, things perhaps they got to avoid with him. But the bottom line is Wentz was spectacular. He still should be considered the MVP of the entire league. He made so many plays with his legs, and that's not Nick Foles' game. Things have to be a little bit cleaner in the pocket. Receivers have to be open. The protection has to be there, and he's just not a guy that goes out and makes a lot of creative plays scrambling around, and that's what Wentz did a lot. You don't know how many times he bailed Philadelphia out of dire situations.
As far as the AFC, obviously New England, the number one seed, and most people pointing to Pittsburgh as being their biggest threat, but there are some that say, not Pittsburgh the biggest threat, that it's Jacksonville that could be the biggest threat to New England. Are you buying into that, or is it still Pittsburgh to you?
I'm still staying with the Steelers. I think Roethlisberger, big games. If they get Antonio Brown back, I think they're a problem. They can deal with the cold weather. I like Jacksonville. I'm just concerned a little bit with their offense. If they need to score at the end of a football game in a 2-minute drill, if they're behind, I don't know that they can do that. But the one thing that Jacksonville is going to do is they're going to play outstanding defense. Man, are they impressive. They can shut you down on the corner with Boye and Ramsey, and they do a great job with their scheme, getting some one-on-one rushes up front. They got guys that can get the passer. But when you look at this tournament, Mike, you must agree there's 6 or 7 dark horse teams that we really don't know much about in the playoff format. Remember, Buffalo's in the tournament. The Saints, no one thought they'd be in the tournament. The Rams have turned things around. This entire field has a lot of unknowns. That's what makes it very exciting for me.
Well, certainly, and you mentioned Buffalo. Kyle Williams will be joining us in a little bit to talk about the Bills finally ending that 17 season playoff drought, and that's the Doug Marrone Bowl as they go up against his old team, their old coach in Jacksonville. I want to ask you about one of your old players, though, John. John Lynch, safety for you with the Bucks, obviously up for the Pro Football Hall of Fame now. What are your memories of him as a player and the things he was able to do for you?
You know, the thing I remember most about John Lynch is just looking in front of the team in the meeting room at how wired he was. He didn't like football. He loved football. He had to bring every single day. I don't know how he woke up in the morning. He must have got very little sleep. He looked like he loved football more than any guy I've ever coached. He had a presence about him on the field as a leader. He was an incredible communicator. And he was one of the biggest hitters in pro football for almost a decade. But he had great ball skills. If we played him deep, if we put him up near the line of scrimmage, he was a force. He played like a linebacker. Just a great professional football player. What he did in the community here in Tampa, I can't imagine him not being in the Hall of Fame, and I wish him the best. I'm so proud for his success in San Francisco. He's one of the really, really good guys.
And we certainly looks like they found their quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo with the way he's played down the stretch.
Absolutely.
John Lynch doing a good job there. John, we appreciate you being with us. Good luck on the game this weekend with you and Sean calling the Titans and Chiefs. And if it does indeed turn out that you are headed on to Oakland, I will miss you on the draft this year, my friend.
Yeah, thanks. I'll miss you guys too. We'll see what happens, and no matter what, I consider you guys my very good friend, and look forward to catching up again.
Thanks, right, John. Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
All right, guys. See you later.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. Yeah. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcoming in.
Yes, as a D lineman,
Williams.
he has scored a touchdown and I never did. So.
There you go. Joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Kyle, first and foremost, congratulations on the Bills ending that drought. What was the scene like? We saw the video of all you guys watching the end of the Bengals-Ravens game in the locker room. When you finally sunk in and you saw the Boyd touchdown and you guys were going to the playoffs, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
You're just so grateful, for, been here 12 years and so many things have happened, ups and downs, and, you have surgeries and you're coming back from things, and, just grateful for, the opportunity to be there in that moment. You kind of envisioned it and you wanted it to happen, and, not having it happen so many times for it to finally happen, to be here when it happened I was just grateful. I was in there with my sons, and it was just a fun time for everybody there.
Does it, now it can't erase obviously everything of not making the playoffs, but does it mute some of the pain that you went through the last however many years, well, your entire career there, obviously, before making the playoffs? Does it mute that some?
Well, I just think it makes it worth it, right? You're going through everything because you want an opportunity to be a world champion. You want a chance to win a Super Bowl. And, for the first time in my career, this is really the first chance I've gotten. So, it makes it worth it. And, like I said, there's so many ups and downs, but to be able to celebrate there with my teammates and, a couple of my sons, it was a really special moment and something I won't forget.
Well, we saw the video of you running around on the field with your sons afterwards, but obviously the playoffs is the Sunday for you guys. The cherry had to be the touchdown. And the thing that we loved about that, they had clearly worked on that. That wasn't a last-second decision to put you in, right, because you guys had a coordinated celebration. So take us through the idea when you knew that play was going to be called, and if it was successful, you knew what you were going to do.
Well, we had worked on it a little bit during the week, and it was mostly about transition and handoff and make sure I was comfortable with that. And I knew when we got the pass interference in the end zone, we were going to be 1st and 1 from the 1. So I said, if they're ever going to run it, now's the time. I don't want to imagine us hanging our hat on that play on a 3rd down, and we ran it and we got in. And as far as the celebration goes, it was totally spur of the moment, spontaneous. We're all jumping up and down like, what are we going to do? I don't know if it was me. I don't know if it was somebody else. Was like, oh, let's do a bomb, throw it up in there, we'll all fall. And we're like, great, do it. And we threw it and just fell down. It was just a lot of fun celebrating those guys and, trying to celebrate to the max because I don't know if that'll ever happen again.
Talking to Kyle Williams, defensive tackle for Buffalo, as they get ready to play in their first playoff game in a long, long time. 1999. So I know you had one other carry in a game in 2000. Not carry, but you were on the field and you blocked in that play when Chan Gailey was a coach. But I know you practiced it a couple of times during the week. But when you know it's coming to you, so the play is called, it's coming to you, you're a D lineman, you're not used to handling the ball. What was your as you were getting down in your stance, going through the play, what was your biggest worry?
Well, I couldn't hear Tyrod's cadence, so I had to watch the ball. So that was number one. And then once I didn't false start, it was ball security. I say, I can't fumble this because if I find a way to screw this up, they're never going to let you do it again. They call your number, they put something in specifically for you, and if you screw it up, you're out. So I'm like, okay, those are the two things. I said, if I get stopped or something like that, nobody really expected you to score a rushing touchdown anyway. But if you get a pre-snap penalty or you fumble the ball and you get a turnover, you're on the blacklist. So those are the two things going through my mind. And luckily I got the ball, and basically all I did was fall for about 1.5 yards into the end zone. Just about anybody could do that.
I don't, but you did it, Kyle. That's the thing. You did it. Now, I don't want you to give away, any game plan or anything, but if we see 1st and 1, on the 1 yard line against Jacksonville, could we see a reappearance of you on the field?
Well, all I'm saying is I've had one opportunity to score a touchdown, and I've got one touchdown. So, it might be the making of a monster here. I might be calling for the ball. I might be yelling at the offensive coordinator on the sideline. I never know how far I might go with this thing.
Hey, man, you're going to be a wide receiver before we know it. Just calling for the ball. You're always open. But, Kyle, here's the one thing I have a concern about. Can we get you on the hands team on onside kicks? Because you guys have had some issues with the Buffalo Bills with the Miami Dolphins in that one department in the 2 games you guys have played this year against them.
Yeah, I don't know if those guys know how to put a little extra wiggle on the onside or what, but I think our guys will figure it out. At least hopefully. We don't need to do that too many more times.
Well, thankfully you won't have to do that this year. And as Mike said, you're now going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is the Baloney Bowl or the Doug Marrone Bowl, as your former head coach who left you guys after a winning season. Thought he was going to get a job in the NFL, had to sit out for a while. Now he's the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is there extra motivation for you because of the way it ended with Doug Marrone in Buffalo?
Not for me. I'm one of the few that was here when he was here. And, as far as I'm concerned, the past is the past. And the thing about being around the NFL for a long time is you're always going to play old teammates. You're always going to play friends. You're always going to play old coaches on different staffs. And you're always going to kind of continue to run across one another, whether they left on good terms, they left on bad terms, So there's really nothing extra there for me. It's just opportunity for me and my teammates to, go out and play in a playoff game, which they worked so hard for and they deserve to be in. So
let's look at this game up against Jacksonville. We know they love to run the ball. Certainly they'll throw it when they need to, but with the backs they have, the line and their offensive scheme they have running the ball. So give us a breakdown of them. We know how great their defense is, but the side of the ball you'll be going against, give us a little bit on that Jacksonville offense.
Well, I think, it starts with the running backs with Fournette and Ivory and Yeldon. I don't know if anybody's got a stable of running backs like that in the league, at least 3. That jumps off the page when you watch those guys. Offensive line, big physical guys, and they're committed to the run game. So it's something that defensively we're going to have to be prepared for. We're going to have to, be really focused on our details of our run fits and different things like that, because they're going to challenge you that way. They can shrink the game and take it over. So it's a great challenge for us. We're excited about it. We'll be up for it. We're going to have a great week of preparation with a lot of energy, and we're going to be excited to go.
Kyle, take people inside a little bit. For a guy like you that's been around for a long time, you've seen about every formation you can see, and I talk at times about when players get game plans on Wednesday and, you have this amount of percentages in this formation, they do this or that. You've been around a while. You've seen it all. What is your film study about now? When you're going into the film room, is it the schemes? Is it the guy you're playing against? Let people know how you prepare individually to battle against an offense.
Well, a lot of times early in the week, before we start getting into game plan specific things, I'll watch individual linemen. I'll watch all of their offensive linemen. I'll watch run pass keys. I'll watch stances. I'll watch formations. What do they do in the backfield? And then I'll start getting a feel for what they like to do. What does this guy do well? So maybe I can go to Jerry Hughes and be like, hey, I've been watching this, and this guy does this well, and run and pass. And then I can kind of work my way down the line where it's not just about me. It's helping all the guys on the line, kind of helping them with their preparation. But, I'm like, okay, what are they doing out of this? What does this guy do well? What does he not do well? What has he struggled with? And then it'll kind of evolve for a couple of days, and then we'll get in today when we start getting into game planning and their run game. I'll have a pretty good handle on, what they like to do, and then I just kind of expand it from there. So, we'll start putting in our game plan, our defenses, the things that we're going to do. We'll figure out what we want to do on third down against them and just kind of marry all of those in and kind of bring the D linemen along with me and make sure that we're all seeing things the same way so we can communicate fast and we can play fast.
Bills defensive tackle Kyle Williams with us on Golic and Wingo. And you mentioned about the running game of the Jags. We got to ask you about Shady McCoy. He went out of that win over the Dolphins with that ankle injury, had to be carted off. It looked really bad. What can you tell us about his availability for this game Saturday?
I don't know. I know that he's been in the training room, and obviously we're hopeful he can play. He's a big part of who we are, a great player for us and a great teammate. So, we're all pulling for him, and hopefully his ankle will be something that can hold up and let us have our running back that we desperately need.
Yeah, I'm sure like most players, if he can get out on the field, he's going to try and get out on the field. Kyle, how about this? How about if you had a microphone and you were in front of the tens of thousands of Buffalo Bill fans that, like you, have been waiting and waiting and waiting, and this moment is finally here? What would you say to those fans?
Well, I'm so happy and thankful for those guys. You know, in my career, I've tried to be very vocal about our fans and how great they are and who they are and what they mean to us. You know, I think more than anything, as I kind of thought about it over the last day or so, is, you know, next year when the football season rolls around and they're getting into the playoff hunt or it's preseason, they're talking about playoffs. You know, they don't have to stomach the thing, oh, well, you know, the Buffalo Bills are in 17-year playoff drought, or, oh, hey, they're coming a 18-year playoff drought. You know, they don't have to take that anymore. They don't have to listen to that anymore. And I know that's a tremendous weight lifted off of them, and I'm so happy for them. And like I said earlier, I'm so grateful that I could be here for so long. But, you know, more than anything, I was standing in that locker room when I saw that whole thing was over.
Yeah, and to see how the fans have reacted, donating all that money to Andy Dalton's foundation. Over 150,000 now Buffalo Bills fans have donated to Andy Dalton's foundation because obviously the touchdown pass put you guys in the playoffs. That was a great thing to see as well. Hey, Kyle, congratulations, man. A long time coming. Enjoy the heck out of this, man, because it's been 12 years in the making. We appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Kyle.
I will, guys. Thanks a lot. Hey, not a very, very nice comment about Notre Dame. That was not nice at all. I heard that before I came on. That was painful to listen to the first thing in the morning.
I told them to not have you be able to listen to that. I apologize. Actually, I don't.
Look, it's painful for me every morning listening to it, all right?
Oh, I can imagine.
Kyle, we appreciate it. You
Thanks,
too,
Kyle.
man. Thanks so much.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big, giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
We just had Kyle Williams on as the Bills are back in the playoffs for the first time since 1999. But today is a very special, and I guess it makes sense that it would happen, that the Bills would break that drought this year. Right. Because today, January 3rd, 2018, is the God, I feel old.
Yeah, we are old.
Thank you. I should just accept it. The 25th anniversary of what I thought was the single greatest game in the history of the NFL.
The great comeback,
The great comeback game between the Houston Oilers and the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills were down 38 at one point, and it came back to win that 38-3, I believe it was, and came back to win 41-38 in overtime. One of the craziest games I've ever seen in all time, and it was just nuts. I mean, all the Houston Oilers, were you on that team? No, you had already moved to Philadelphia. You already moved to Philadelphia.
Oh, it was gone, yeah.
Yeah. But all the Oilers needed to do in the second half of that game was literally get a first down in the second half, and it would have been over. I mean, it was 28-3 at the half, and then they had a pick six that made it 35-3. And then the Bills stormed back with 28 points in the third quarter.
It's unbelievable. Frank Reich.
Yeah. And with their backup quarterback, that's right, because Jim Kelly was out. He was hurt in the season finale, which was against the Houston Oilers in the House of Pain, the old Astrodome. And at that point, Frank Reich had the biggest comeback in college football as a Maryland quarterback against Miami, and then did it against the Houston Oilers as a member of the Buffalo Bills. And what made that game great for me was not only the comeback, but the Bills took the lead 38-35, only to have Houston come back and tie it to send it into overtime, and then in overtime they get the field goal to go on and win it. It was the craziest thing.
Really was incredible. So let's add to some of the other things on this day in sports. Again, January 3rd. Let's go back to 1920, shall we?
Let's do it.
The New York Yankees purchased Babe Ruth from the Red Sox for $125,000.
Now, at that time, that money seems like an astronomical
unbelievable amount. And now with most of the athletes, they could find it in their couch.
Hembo, do some calculating. What would $120,000 in 1920 be equal to today? Because that was a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
However, Yankees got the better of that deal. No matter how much that money calculates out to be, Yankees got the better of that deal.
How about on this date, January 3rd, 1973? I love how they write this out. The Columbia Broadcasting System.
Why wouldn't it be?
CBS sells the New York Yankees to a 17-person syndicate headed by George Steinbrenner for $10 million.
Hembo, calculate those numbers as
well. Keep calculating, Hembo. Keep calculating.
As we're presented by Progressive Insurance, we're going to make sure that Hembo progresses us with these numbers. We need 1920 money, $125,000. What would that be today? And 1973, $10 million. What would that be today?
And I have one more for you. In 1983, on January 3rd, Tony Dorsett sets an NFL record with a 99-yard rush the Cowboys against the Vikings. Hembo, find out what in 2018 a 99-yard rush would be.
It would be a 99-yard rush.
Oh, it would?
Yeah, just so we're clear.
Oh, okay.
That was in the old Metrodome. And you remember at the old Metrodome, the sidelines and the yard markers were not painted. It was like a chalky substance.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There was always chalk all over the field.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that was, by the way, that was in the strike-shortened season of 1982. That wasn't a playoff game.
No, it was not.
That was a regular season game that helped the Cowboys get into the playoffs that year. But, yeah, that was a regular season game.
And then January 3rd, 2003, Ohio State beat Miami double overtime in the Fiesta Bowl, 31-24 for the national championship. That was the BCS title. But, boy, I remember that game.
That was the late flag game.
Yes,
the late flag
it was.
on the pass interference when Miami thought they had won it.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
I'm going to fix that for John. I think it's going to happen.
I do as well.
I understand why he said the way he said it, but if they offer him the job, he's going to take it.
Listen, you don't know how somebody's going to answer questions like this. John's name comes up every year for a head coaching job, and we've asked him every year. And a lot of times it's, I'm happy where I am, not thinking about that. And this year, I remember when we talked to him when it first started coming out, he said, never say never. So it kind of raised some eyebrows of, maybe this is the time he's looking to go back. And this morning, he was about as honest as could be as far as this is concerned, basically saying, if he's get offered this job, he's going to take this job. And talked about other candidates being looked at. I have no idea how many other candidates they're looking at. I mean, from a technical standpoint, there is a Rooney Rule they're supposed to be going through, correct?
Yes.
I mean, as far as, that is concerned. But once they go through, as John said, all their candidates, and that's why I asked him, if Mark Davis were to call you and offer you a job, would you be the next head coach? He said there's a good chance, which you're right means he's going to be the next coach, I think, and I think you believe as well, and I think most people think the next coach of the Oakland Raiders. And then you did ask him flat out about the rumor, or not the rumors, the
reports that he would have ownership.
That he would get as ownership as part of the deal, and he absolutely denied that, said that is not part of it at all. He's going to get paid a boatload of cash, there's no doubt about that, and more power to anybody getting all the money they can. But he said that part of it, the ownership part of it, was not true.
But again, he will be calling the Titans-Chiefs game for us on ESPN simulcast on ABC. So we'll see what happens there. By the way, this news just came in about the college championship game coming up between Alabama and Georgia, and more linebacker issues. Anthony Jennings, the linebacker, just posted this on Twitter. I played my last game, but I will be back stronger than ever next season. He recovers from knee surgery. So, look, that's some
that hurts him.
That hurts some things that Nick Saban has been talking about. Their linebacking core has been decimated this year at times, and Anthony Jennings now, one of those linebackers, will not be there in the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, they've been nailed all year at the linebacker position. Injuries all year. Dylan Moses, Sean Deion Hamilton are both currently out with season-ending knee injuries. Dylan Moses was their 5-star true freshman who ended up playing some because of all the injuries that they've had. They've gone through so many injuries at that position, and that was the one. I know they were, and maybe they had more information to this going in. I'm sure Alabama fans who didn't were really keeping their fingers crossed of what that MRI was going to show, but now we know. Yet another linebacker down for the Crimson Tide.
And we'll see how that plays out going forward. Again, Monday, we will be there in Atlanta for the College Football National Championship game. By the way, we asked this of Hembo a couple of segments ago, and he's able to come through for us. We're looking at this day in history, January 3rd.
Yes.
Things that have happened. In 1920, the Yankees sold Babe Ruth, or the Red Sox sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees for $125,000.
Yes.
In today's dollars, $1.5 million. Still a bargain.
Still a drop in the bucket.
This one is the most interesting, though. In 1973, the Columbia Broadcasting System, otherwise known as CBS, sold the Yankees to a consortium headed by Tampa's George Steinbrenner for $10 million. That would be worth $56 million today.
Yeah, but
Forbes estimates the Yankees are worth $3.7 billion.
Yeah. One worked out pretty well.
Well, it's like real estate.
Yep.
They're not making any more of it. Mm-hmm. So hold on to it. Eventually the land will always go up. So that is an amazing thing.
Yes, it is.
They're worth $3.7 billion today, and in today's dollars, that $10 million would have parlay into $56 million.
Well played.
Thank you, sir. So anyway, something else that's going on here, the 28 modern era finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, or actually all the finalists, are out there. We have 15 modern era finalists, which will eventually go down to 10. Then they'll vote to get the initial classes. We got 2 senior finalists and 1 contributor finalist. And it's interesting because one of those players, again, on the list is Terrell Owens. Now, Randy Moss is going in. Let's not kid ourselves. Randy Moss, I would be, well, let me put it this way. I would be stunned beyond belief if Randy Moss is not a first ballot Hall of Famer for the things he was able to do in the NFL. Look, there are probably going to be some writers that are going to be angry with him at the way he handled himself at times. But at the end of the day, the Pro Football Hall of Fame is about what you do on the field. That's it. Those are the only qualifications. Did you excel on the field?
What is interesting, I will say, is among the 25 modern-era wide receivers elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, only 5 went in their first year of eligibility. 5. And the latest was 2010. That was Jerry Rice.
Who was the number one by far in everybody.
Before that, it was 95 and Steve Largent. Before that, you're going back to 1983 with Paul Warfield, 78 Lance Allworth, and 73 Raymond Berry. So you've had guys like Tim Brown waiting 6 years, Marvin Harrison 3 years, Andre Reed 9 years, Chris Carter 6 years, Art Monk 8 years, Stallworth 10 years, Lynn Swann 14 years. So it has not happened too often where you go in that first year. I think I think T.O. should have been in already.
Well, that's
the thing now. So now we have Randy Moss.
So let's assume that Randy Moss is getting in. I think we both agree that's going to happen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now, because of what you just alluded to, and it would be only the 6th time ever that a wide receiver in the first ballot gets in, does the committee want to keep him as a standalone because of what that means being a first ballot wide receiver to go into the Hall of Fame in your very first try? And what does that do for someone like Terrell Owens? Just so people know, Terrell Owens, whether you love him or hate him, 8th all-time in receptions, receiving yards 2nd behind only Jerry Rice. Now, next year, Larry Fitzgerald might be able to pass him if he comes back and play. He's 3rd in receiving touchdowns. So he has the credentials. Whether you liked him or not, and he was a very divisive personality, his resume on the field warrants being in the Hall of Fame. Do you think they're going to put in Randy Moss and Terrell Owens in the same year?
No, I do not.
Yeah.
I think Randy Moss goes in. I don't think T.O. goes in. And I know, even our own Bill Polian had said, I think Hall of Famers are for people who make their teams better, not who detracted from them. What did Owens do to make his team better?
Well, I would say 2nd in receiving yards and 3rd in receiving touchdowns.
Listen, and I love Bill Polian. He's one of the greatest ever, but I disagree with that. I mean, that certainly is part of it, what kind of a teammate you are and how do you do your team. But the Hall of Famers are how great of a player you are as well. And T.O. is one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play in the game. It is a joke from the writers that he is not already in the Hall of Fame. A joke. And for these writers to sit there and with the high and mighty, we're going to decide we didn't like the way you acted, so we're going to keep you out of the Hall of Fame for a while, when it's an abomination for the fact that he is a Hall of Fame wide receiver who should be in the Hall of Fame. That said, I think Randy Moss gets in, and I think the high and mighty writers and voters do their thing again and say, we're going to keep you on the outside, T.O. looking in. He'll eventually get in, but he's going to wait. And it has been a position where guys have had to wait. Isaac Bruce is on the finalist list right now as well. He's not going to get in this year. I think at some point he does. But that line that forms at the wide receiver position, that is real. There is no doubt about that.
Well, here's part of the argument, and I'm with you. Just I want to be clear. I think he should be in. There's no question to me that Terrell Owens was. It's the eye test. Is a catch a catch? Is it a fumble or not a fumble? Is he a Hall of Famer or not a Hall of Famer? Terrell Owens to me was all of that. Even though he was sometimes as divisive as sand in a salad. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just not. There's a lot of things that drove you crazy. But to that point, here's what some more things that Bill Polian said. What did Owens do to make his teams better? He put up a lot of numbers. Bill Parcells said that he was a disruptive force. Jerry Jones, who's probably one of the most easygoing people when it comes to disruptive players, got rid of him. I got texts from people in Philadelphia responding to the campaign saying this guy was a cancer and destroyed our football team. I get all of that, but it's all selective, is it not? I mean, Bill Parcells says he was a disruptive force. Didn't Parcells work with Lawrence Taylor?
Yeah.
Didn't Lawrence Taylor have a bunch of issues that made him somewhat disruptive? And he walked into the Hall of Fame.
Yes, he did.
Walked into the Hall of Fame. So it all depends on how you look at certain things. And I get it that sometimes he rubbed you the wrong way, and there's no question. he may not admit it, but I think in his mind, he probably would say, yeah, maybe I should have done some things a little differently. But to me, that doesn't measure up against the production you saw on the field.
I completely agree. I think it's now
he's there.
And how about this? If you could choose one to have for your team, would it be Randy Moss or T.O.? Not in the Hall of Fame, but to play on your team.
Well, I would go with Randy Moss.
I would go with Randy Moss
because I think he had more of the instant home run. The mailbox. I'm open. Hit me.
I agree. I would go. And
it's
again,
not detracting from what T.O. was.
This is splitting hairs. This is not saying you don't want T.O. For the production he had, but. So I do think Randy Moss gets in. I don't think T.O. gets in. I do think he eventually gets in, but he is an absolute Hall of Famer.
And look, to that point, several teams got rid of Randy Moss. The Vikings decided to move on.
Sure did.
Then he went to the Raiders. That didn't work out.
He wasn't without issue as well.
Correct.
So that's a thought process as well. Will these voters say, we're going to teach you a lesson too, Randy, and you're not? We don't feel.
I think Randy's.
We don't feel you deserve to be in the Jerry Rice, Steve Largent, Paul Warfield, Lance Allworth, Raymond Berry, category of first time. I have no idea. I don't know what's in these guys' minds who run this thing and vote for this
eventually
thing.
He worked his way out of Bill Belichick's favor in New England.
You know what is amazing, though, that I found out is the voting, how they tell the people they're getting in. When we were in Houston for the Super Bowl last year, and that's where the players find out.
Yep.
I happened to be in the hotel, and I ran into Tony Baselli, who was up again this year for the list. And I saw him, and we were chatting in the hallway. We were staying in the same hotel. And I asked him, because I sure as hell never knew.
Right.
What happens? What's the process here? He said, for an hour, I think it was from 3 to 4 in the afternoon, they had to be in their room, in their hotel room.
Just sitting there waiting?
Just waiting. And David Baker would come and
Hall of Fame president
would come knock on your door.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, if nobody came to your door in an hour, you weren't in. If somebody knocked on the door, you were in. And later on, I agree. Later on that day, I happened to get in an elevator. Who got on? David Baker and a camera crew.
There you go.
And I was like, David, what floor are you going to?
Exactly.
And Baselli was on my floor. Yeah. And when he didn't get off on my floor, I was like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, I felt kind of bad for Tony at that point.
By the way, David Baker, one of the largest human beings you will ever.
Yeah, well, I dealt with him a lot when he was running the Arena League. Holy smoke.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Big man.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.